Li Tay looked out the window of the transport ship and saw the biggest school he had ever imagined. The Galactic Academy of Advanced Sciences hung in space like a giant metal flower with thousands of windows glowing with different colored lights. Ships from across the galaxy docked at its many ports, bringing students from worlds he had only read about in Earth's new alien contact files. His hands shook a little as he picked up his simple backpack. Inside were the few things Earth could give him: basic clothes, a tablet with human knowledge, and a photo of his sister Dobbin waving goodbye at the spaceport. Everything else about this place was alien technology far beyond what humans had. The docking tube connected with a soft hiss. Tay walked through the airlock and stepped into the academy for the first time. The main hall was huge, with ceilings that seemed to go up forever. Students floated, crawled, slithered, and walked in all directions. Some looked like giant insects with crystal wings. Others were made of what looked like living rock. A few seemed to be just balls of light that moved through the air. Tay had studied the basic galactic races during his trip, but seeing them in person was different. He felt very small and very human. "You must be the primitive," said a voice that sounded like breaking glass. Tay turned to see a creature that looked like it was made of blue crystal. Light moved through its body in patterns that probably meant something. This had to be one of the resonant species he had read about. "I'm Li Tay from Earth," he said, trying to sound confident. "Yes, the human. I am Kix of the Crystal Worlds. We have heard about your species. You have only just learned to travel between stars, correct? And your computers are still made of metal and silicon instead of quantum consciousness?" Before Tay could answer, the floor shook under heavy footsteps. A creature the size of a small building walked over. Its skin looked like gray stone, and its eyes glowed red. This was definitely one of the Titan species. "Small human," the giant said in a voice like an earthquake. "I am Blor. I hear your people are weak. Is this true?" Tay looked up at the massive alien. On Earth, he was considered tall and strong. Here he felt like an ant. "We're different," he said. A laugh like tinkling bells came from somewhere above. Tay looked up to see a glowing ball of white light floating near the ceiling. Patterns of color moved across its surface. "Different means lesser here, little solid one," the light said. Its voice seemed to come from inside Tay's head. "I am Whisper of the Energy Realms. Your species thinks in such simple ways. Only 3 dimensions. Only one consciousness per body. How do you even learn anything?" More alien students gathered around. Some pointed at Tay with tentacles, claws, or appendages he didn't have names for. Their voices mixed together in languages that hurt his ears. "Quiet!" The voice cut through the noise like a blade. Everyone stopped talking at once. Principal Vextar walked toward them. He looked like a praying mantis that had grown to be 7 feet tall, with 4 arms instead of 2. His compound eyes reflected the light in thousands of tiny rainbows. Tay had seen his picture in the academy files, but meeting him was still scary. "Students will not harass the new arrival," Vexatar said. His voice clicked and buzzed when he talked. "Though I admit, the Council's decision to accept a human was unusual." The principal looked down at Tay with what might have been curiosity or disgust. It was hard to tell with insect faces. "Li Tay of Earth," Vextar continued, "you have been given a great honor. No human has ever attended this academy. We expect you will do your best, though we understand your species has limitations." Tay felt his face get hot. Back on Earth, he had been one of the smartest students in his school. He had won science. competitions and math contests. But here, even the principal talked about him like he was a pet trying to do tricks. "Thank you for the chance, sir," Tay said. "Your first class begins in 1 hour," Vextar said. "Advanced Dimensional Mathematics with Professor Kellix. Try to keep up." The principal walked away, his forearms moving in perfect coordination. The other students started to leave too, but not before giving Tay more strange looks. Kix floated closer. "Human, in my world we solved dimensional mathematics before your species learned to make fire. You should prepare to fail." "We will see," Tay said quietly. The crystal being made a sound like wind chimes in a storm, probably laughter, and glided away. Blore stomped over and looked down at Tay. "Small human, on my world, the weak become food for the strong. Here, the stupid become jokes for the smart. Which will you be?" "Neither," Tay said, meeting the giant's red eyes. Blore made a rumbling sound that might have been approval and walked away, each step making the floor shake. Whisper descended from the ceiling, until it was floating right in front of Tay's face. The ball of light pulsed with different colors. "Interesting," it said inside his head. "You are not afraid, but fear and ability are different things. Your mind is so limited, single-threaded. How does your species think about complex problems?" "We break them into smaller pieces," Tay said. "Simple, crude, inefficient." The light ball rose back toward the ceiling. This will be entertaining to watch. Tay found himself alone in the massive hall. Students moved around him like he wasn't there. Ships continued to dock and leave through the windows. The academy kept running like a huge machine, and he was just a small new part that nobody expected to work very well. He thought about Dabin back on Earth. She was only 14, but she always believed he could do anything. "Show them what humans can do," she had said when he left. Tay picked up his backpack and walked toward the classroom section. He had 1 hour to find Professor Calix's room and prepare for his first test. The other students expected him to fail. The principal expected him to fail. Maybe even Earth expected him to fail. But Tay had not come all this way to prove them right. The hallway to the classrooms was full of alien students discussing homework in languages that sounded like music, grinding rocks or electronic beeps. Some of them used devices that projected equations into the air. Others seemed to solve problems just by thinking at them. Tay pulled out his simple tablet and started reviewing basic calculus. It was the most advanced math Earth had taught him. He hoped it would be enough. As he walked toward his first class, Tay didn't know that he was about to change everything. He was just a 17-year-old from Seoul who was good at math and didn't like to give up. The galaxy was about to learn what that meant. 3 months had passed since Tay first walked into the academy. He had learned to navigate the floating hallways and understand the basic galactic common language. His grades were good, though not the best. Most professors seemed surprised that he could keep up at all. Today was different. Today was the annual Impossible Challenge. Tay sat in the great assembly hall with thousands of other students. The hall was so big that students from the far sections looked like tiny dots. Floating platforms held students who couldn't sit in. Normal chairs, and the ceiling had special environments for students who lived in different atmospheres. Principal Vextar stood at the center podium, his 4 arms spread wide. "Students of the galaxy," his voice echoed through translators. "Today, you face the impossible challenge. For 300 years, we have tested the greatest young minds with problems that have no solution. These challenges were created by the wisest members of each species. They represent the limits of what intelligence can achieve. A hologram appeared above the principal showing 4 different symbols: a crystal, a mountain, a swirling galaxy, and a complex geometric pattern. 4 challenges, Vexitar continued, each created by a different species to be impossible for all others. Today you may attempt any or all of them. Those who make significant progress will receive the highest honors. Those who solve even one will be remembered forever. Kix floated near Tay. The crystal being's light patterns seemed excited. Human, I suggest you watch rather than embarrass yourself. My people created the crystal maze. It requires perfect harmonic frequencies that your crude vocal cords cannot produce. Blor's heavy footsteps announced his arrival. The Titan strength trial is mine to attempt, he rumbled. It requires moving the eternal mountain through pure force. Your weak human muscles would break trying. Whisper descended from above, its light pulsing with what Tay had learned was amusement. The Consciousness Bridge challenge needs a mind that can exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Your single-thread consciousness cannot even imagine what that means. What about the 4th one? Tay asked. The hive logic web, said a smaller insect creature near the principal. It requires thinking as a collective intelligence. Your individualistic species could never understand true group consciousness. Students began moving toward the 4 challenge stations. Each area was surrounded by crowds of beings who had tried and failed these tests for generations. Tay walked toward the crystal maze first. The challenge area contained a structure made of hundreds of crystal formations arranged in complex patterns. Kix was already there, positioning itself in front of the largest crystal. Observe, human, Kix said. This maze can only be solved by producing exact harmonic frequencies in perfect sequence. Each crystal must resonate at its natural frequency simultaneously. Kix began to sing. The sound was beautiful and alien, like 1,000 wind chimes playing a symphony. The crystals started to glow and hum in response. Other resonant species students joined in, their voices blending into complex harmonies. But nothing happened. The maze remained closed. Tay walked around the structure, ignoring the singing. He noticed that some crystals were slightly different sizes and shapes. He pulled out his tablet and started making notes about angles and distances. "What are you doing?" asked a snake-like student with 6 eyes. "Looking," Tay said. He remembered. Something his Earth physics teacher had taught him about acoustic reflection. Instead of trying to make the crystals sing, what if he could make them stop singing in the right pattern? Tay picked up some small pieces of crystal that had broken off over the years. He began placing them at specific points around the maze. When Kix and the others sang their perfect harmonies, the small pieces created interference patterns. The frequencies canceled each other out in some places and amplified in others. The maze began to glow. Sections that had never lit up before started pulsing with light. Within minutes, a pathway opened through the center. The singing stopped. Kix's light patterns turned angry colors. "Impossible. You cannot produce harmonic frequencies." "I didn't need to," Tay said. "I used the frequencies you were already making." The crowd around the crystal maze grew as word spread. A human had solved the resonant challenge without using any advanced technology. Tay moved to the Titan strength trial. A massive artificial mountain sat in the center of the area, made of materials from Blor's home world. It had to weigh millions. Of Tons Blore was there with dozens of other Titan species students. They were taking turns trying to push, pull, and lift the mountain. Their massive muscles strained, but the mountain didn't move even a tiny bit. "Your turn, small human," Blore said, breathing heavily from his effort. "Show us your strength." Tay walked around the mountain instead of trying to push it. He noticed that it sat on a platform with small gaps around the edges. Underneath, he could see the Academy's maintenance systems. "I need some basic materials," Tay said. "Metal bars, some Academy cleaning chemicals, and access to the maintenance level below." "You cannot move the mountain with cleaning supplies," laughed a Titan student. "We'll see," Tay said. He spent the next hour setting up a system of levers and fulcrums using metal bars from the maintenance area. Then he mixed some of the cleaning chemicals in a way that created a controlled chemical reaction. Basically, a very small explosion at exactly the right place and time. The explosion pushed against his lever system at the perfect moment. The mountain rose up just enough to break contact with its resting place. Once it was floating free for just a second, Tay used the Academy's artificial gravity controls to redirect it to a new position. The mountain moved. The Titan students stood with their mouths open. Blore stared at Tay like he was seeing a ghost. Small. "Human used big brain instead of big muscles," Blore said slowly. "This is new thinking." Word was spreading faster now. Students from across the Academy were coming to watch the human who was solving impossible challenges. At the consciousness bridge, Whisper was waiting with other energy beings. The challenge required connecting minds across different dimensional spaces, something that required existing in multiple states of consciousness at once. "Human, this challenge will break your limited mind," Whisper warned. "Your brain can only process one thought stream at a time." Tay looked at the challenge. Setup. It was a complex array of devices that were supposed to link consciousness across dimensions. But to Tay, it looked like a communication problem. "I can't think in multiple dimensions," he admitted, "but I can build something that communicates across them." Using basic components from his Earth toolkit and some Academy equipment, Tay built a simple radio transmitter and receiver. But instead of transmitting across space, he configured it to transmit across the dimensional barriers the challenge used. "Consciousness is just complex information," he explained to the amazed crowd. "If I can't send my mind across dimensions, I can send my thoughts as data and reconstruct them on the other side." His simple device connected the consciousness bridge in a way none of the energy beings had ever considered. The challenge accepted his solution. Whisper's light pattern changed to colors Tay had never seen before. "You turned consciousness into radio waves?" "Information is information," Tay said. "It doesn't matter what form it takes." The final challenge was the Hive Logic Web. Here, insect species students were trying to solve a puzzle that required collective thinking. Every time one student thought of a solution, it had to be perfectly synchronized with hundreds of others. Tay watched them try for a while. They were trying to think as one mind, but they kept failing because individual thoughts interfered with the group. "What if you don't need to think as one mind?" Tay said to the group. "What if you think as individual minds that are connected?" He showed them how to treat the puzzle like a network instead of a single brain. Each student worked on one part of the problem and shared their results with the others. Instead of trying to eliminate individual thinking, they used individual thinking as the building blocks for a larger solution. The Hive Logic Web lit up with success. Principal Vextar appeared at Tay's shoulder. His compound eyes reflected the lights from all 4 completed challenges. "In 300 years," the principal said quietly, "no student has ever solved one of these challenges. You have solved all 4 in a single day." The great assembly hall had gone completely quiet. Thousands of alien students stared at the human who had just proved that their impossible challenges weren't impossible at all. "How?" asked Kix, its light patterns confused and amazed. "I didn't try to be better than your species at what you do." "Best," Tay said. "I just did what humans do best. I thought differently." As news of Tay's success spread through the Academy's communication systems, it was already racing across the galaxy. The human who had walked into school was becoming the human who was changing how the galaxy thought about thinking itself. But Tay didn't know that yet. He was just happy that he had figured out some interesting puzzles. The emergency session of the Galactic Council happened 3 days after news of Tay's impossible challenge solutions reached the capital worlds. In a chamber that floated in the space between 13 star systems, representatives from thousands of species gathered to discuss one question: what do we do about the humans? Counselor Vorth was the oldest being in the galaxy. His species had been traveling between stars when most others were still learning to make fire. His ancient eyes had seen empires rise and fall, and his voice carried the weight of millions of years of wisdom. "The human has solved problems we created to be impossible," Vorth said to the assembled council. "This suggests either that we underestimated human intelligence, or that we overestimated our own." General Krex slammed his 4 fists on the table. His species had conquered half the galaxy through superior military technology before joining the Council. The humans are a threat that must be eliminated before they spread their chaos to other species. They make our people question everything we have built. Scientist Prime Zata shifted between 3 different physical forms as she spoke, her species' way of showing deep thought. "We should capture the human and study him. If we can understand how human minds work, we can control them and use their abilities for our benefit." The debate went on for hours while Tay continued his normal classes, unaware that the most powerful beings in the galaxy were deciding his fate. On Earth, President Lee Min-suk received the first official communication from the galactic government. The message was simple: "Your species has attracted our attention. We are evaluating appropriate responses." Admiral Choi Woo-jin, head of Earth's new Space Defense Force, didn't like the sound of that. He began quietly preparing Earth's small fleet and warning systems, just in case. Dr. Kang Ye-jin, Earth's leading scientist and the person who had recommended Tay for the Academy, started studying every piece of galactic technology Earth had access to. If trouble was coming, Earth needed to be ready. Back at the Academy, strange things began happening to Tay. During a physics lab, his equipment mysteriously malfunctioned, nearly causing an explosion that would have killed him. In the dining hall, his food was contaminated with substances that were harmless to most species, but poisonous to humans. During a zero-gravity training exercise, his safety harness accidentally failed. Tay was smart enough to notice the pattern. Someone was trying to hurt him, and they were being careful to make it look like accidents. But something else was happening, too. Other students were starting to ask him about human thinking methods. First, it was just 1 or 2, but soon small. Groups were gathering around him after classes. "Tay," said Kix one day, "I have been thinking about how you solved the crystal maze. You used our own abilities against us. Is this how humans always think?" "We call it lateral thinking," Tay explained. Instead of trying to break through a wall, we look for doors or windows. Instead of being stronger, we try to be smarter. Blore nodded his massive head. Small human showed Blore that strong is not always about muscles. Strong can be about ideas, too. Whisper floated down from the ceiling. Your species fascinates me. Human. You think in ways that our greatest philosophers never considered. Would you teach us more? Soon Tay was holding informal study groups in his dormitory room. Students from dozens of species came to learn about human problem-solving methods. He taught them about breaking big problems into smaller ones, about looking at situations from different angles, and about trying solutions that seemed impossible. The results were amazing. Students who had struggled with certain subjects for years suddenly started understanding them. Research projects that had been stuck for decades began making progress. The academic performance of students who studied with Ty improved dramatically. But the improvements weren't limited to the academy. As these students communicated with their homeworlds, human thinking methods began spreading across the galaxy. Trade routes that had been considered impossible became profitable when traders started thinking like humans. Scientific problems that had puzzled species for generations got solved by applying human-style creativity. The changes were happening so fast that they scared some people. Principal Vextar called Tay to his office on a day when 3 more accidents had nearly hurt him. Lee Tay, the principal said, his 4 arms folded in what Tay had learned was a gesture of serious concern. I must ask you something directly. Are you deliberately trying to destabilize galactic civilization? No, sir, Tay said. I'm just trying to learn and help my friends learn too. Your help is causing problems throughout the galaxy. Traditional teaching methods are being questioned. Ancient wisdoms are being challenged. Some council members believe you are dangerous. Tay felt cold despite the warm office. Am I going to be expelled? Vextar was quiet for a long moment. There are forces working to remove you from the academy, permanently. Some faculty members believe this would be best for galactic stability. Others believe that suppressing human knowledge would be a terrible mistake. What do you believe, sir? The principal's compound eyes reflected light in patterns that reminded Tay of thinking. I believe that my species learned long ago that evolution requires change. Those who refuse to adapt become extinct. Perhaps the galaxy needs to adapt to accommodate human thinking. That evening, Tay was studying in the library when the lights went out. Emergency systems didn't activate like they should have. In the darkness, he heard the sound of multiple beings moving toward him. Human, said a voice he didn't recognize. You have caused enough trouble. It is time for you to have a fatal accident. But before the attackers could reach him, other voices called out in the darkness. Stand away from our friend, rumbled Blore's earthquake voice. Kix's crystalline body began glowing, providing light. Whisper's energy form blazed like a small sun. Around them, dozens of other students appeared. Species that had been enemies for centuries stood together to protect one human. You want to hurt Tay? Said a student Tay barely knew, one of the slug-like, wetland species. You have to go through all of us first. The attackers retreated. They had expected to find one helpless human, not an army of students from across the galaxy. Later, as the emergency systems came back online and Academy security investigated the power failure, Tay realized something important had happened. The students around him weren't just learning human thinking methods, they were starting to act with human values. They were choosing cooperation over competition, friendship over species loyalty. Thank you, Tay said to the group that had saved. Him. You taught us that different thinking makes everyone stronger, said Keeks. Now we protect different thinking. Besides, added Blore with a sound that might have been laughter, small human has big ideas. We want to keep learning them. Word of the attack and the multi-species defense spread quickly through the academy. Students began organizing themselves into study groups that mixed different species. They called them human-style learning pods. Faculty members found themselves divided. Some joined with the students, fascinated by the new approaches to education and research. Others grew more determined to end the human influence before it spread further. Principal Vextar received orders from the Galactic Council to prepare for Tay's removal from the academy. But he also received petitions from thousands of students demanding that human teaching methods be made part of the official curriculum. The academy was splitting into two camps, and the split was starting to spread to the rest of the galaxy. Far away on Earth, President Lee Min-suk was meeting with her advisors about the increasingly urgent messages from galactic authorities. Some demanded that Earth recall its student immediately. Others begged for more human teachers to be sent to their worlds. It seems, said the president, that our young man has started something much bigger than anyone expected. Admiral Choi. Wu Jin looked at the star charts showing the position of Earth's small fleet. I hope he knows what he's doing, because the galaxy is about to become a very dangerous place. At the academy, Tay was preparing for his next class, unaware that he had become the center of a conflict that would reshape galactic civilization. He was just thinking about how to explain human mathematics to his study group that evening. The galaxy was learning that some changes, once started, cannot be stopped. The academy was no longer the peaceful place of learning it had been when Tay first arrived. Students walked in groups, staying close to friends from their study pods. Faculty members avoided eye contact with each other in the hallways. Even the floating pathways seemed tense. Tay had made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. Instead of hiding his teaching methods or trying to avoid attention, he decided to make them official. I want to start a real class, he told Principal Vextar during their weekly meeting. Not just study groups in dormitory rooms, a real course that students can take for credit. Vextar's 4 arms moved in agitation. Li Tay, the Galactics. Council has sent 3 more warnings about your activities. Some species are threatening to withdraw their students if human teaching methods become part of our curriculum. But other species are asking for more human teachers, Tay pointed out. I received 17 requests this week from different worlds wanting Earth to send educators. This was true. While some galactic powers wanted to shut down human influence, others were embracing it. Worlds that had struggled with poverty and technical problems for centuries were suddenly prospering, as they applied human-style creative thinking to their challenges. The Council is talking about closing the Academy entirely, Vexatar said quietly. They say we have become a source of dangerous instability. Then maybe it's time to show them that change doesn't have to be dangerous, Tay said. Let me teach. An official class. Let other faculty observe and participate. If human methods really are harmful, it will become obvious. If they're helpful, then the galaxy can benefit. Vextar was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, You realize that approving such a class would probably end my career and possibly put the Academy at risk of being shut down permanently? Yes, sir. And you still want to do this? Yes, sir. Because hiding good ideas doesn't make them go away. It just makes them harder to use properly. The next day, Vextar announced the creation of an experimental course. alternative problem-solving methods, taught by student instructor Lee Tae of Earth. The announcement caused an immediate crisis. Faculty members who supported traditional methods demanded emergency meetings. Student groups organized protests both for and against the new class. Several species threatened to recall their students immediately. But something unexpected happened. The first day of Ty's official class, over 200 students showed up. The classroom only had space for 50. "We'll need a bigger room," Tay told the crowd of students spilling out into the hallway. They moved to the Great Assembly Hall. 300 students came to the second class. By the end of the week, nearly 1,000 students were attending, and faculty members were sneaking in to observe. Tay's teaching methods were simple but revolutionary. Instead of lecturing, he asked questions. Instead of giving students problems. With known solutions, he gave them real challenges that the galaxy hadn't solved yet. Instead of having students compete against each other, he had them work together. "Today, we're going to solve the Rigel food crisis," Tay announced to his packed class. "The Rigel system has 7 billion people and not enough farmable land. Traditional methods suggest population reduction or massive food imports. Let's think differently." He divided the 1,000 students into mixed species groups. Each group had to include at least 5 different types of beings with different ways of thinking. "Don't try to think like experts," Tay told them. "Try to think like humans. Ask simple questions. Look for obvious solutions that everyone else missed. Combine ideas that seem unrelated." The results amazed even Tay. Within hours, student groups had developed dozens of innovative approaches. Some suggested using asteroid mining to create artificial farmland. Others proposed underwater cities that could grow food in ocean environments. One group designed a system for converting stellar energy directly into nutritional compounds. But the most impressive solution came from a group that included Kix, Blore, Whisper, and 3 other species that had never worked together before. "We don't need more farmland," Kix announced, its crystal body sparkling with excitement. "We need better farming." Their solution combined Titan engineering strength, resonant harmonic plant growth acceleration, energy species direct photosynthesis, enhancement, and human-style systems thinking. They had designed a farming method that could produce 50 times more food per square meter than traditional techniques. Word of the solution reached Rigel within days. Within weeks, they had implemented the student design and solved their food crisis completely. Similar successes followed. Student groups in Ty's class solved transportation problems that had puzzled engineers for centuries. They designed new types of power systems that were more efficient than anything currently in use. They even developed better methods for communicating. Between species that had completely different ways of thinking, the galaxy began to notice. Professor Song Hye-kyung arrived from Earth as the Academy's first official human faculty member. She was followed by engineer Lim Dong-hyun, who immediately started asking uncomfortable questions about why galactic technology was so complicated when simpler methods worked better. Dr. Shin Yun-suk, a philosopher from Seoul National University, began teaching courses in human ethics and decision-making that attracted students from across the known galaxy. But the changes weren't limited to education. As human thinking methods spread, they began affecting everything. Trade efficiency increased by 300% in some sectors as merchants started using human optimization techniques. Scientific research accelerated as different species began collaborating instead of competing. Even military tactics evolved as generals learned to value adaptability over pure technological superiority. The old galactic order was breaking down, but something new was being built in its place. General Krex of the Suppressor faction made one final attempt to end human influence. He arrived at the academy with a battle fleet and demanded that all human teachers be arrested and all human methods be banned. He was met by something unprecedented in galactic history, a multi-species protest involving over 50,000 students from 200 different worlds. "You want to arrest our teachers?" shouted a wetland species student through a translation device. "They taught us how to solve problems we thought were impossible. Human methods helped my world end 1,000-year drought," called out a rock-like being from the outer rim. "Are you going to make us go back to dying of thirst?" "My species has been at war with his species for 10,000 years, said one student, pointing to another. "But human methods taught us that we're stronger working together than fighting apart. Are you going to make us go back to killing each other?" The protest wasn't violent. Students from warrior species stood peacefully next to beings from pacifist cultures. Energy creatures dimmed their lights in respect, while crystalline species sang harmony songs of unity. General Krex had come prepared to fight an army, but found himself facing something his military training had never prepared him for. Thousands of young beings who had learned that cooperation was more powerful than conflict. "This is not natural," Krex said to his officers. "Species are not supposed to work together like this." "Maybe that's the problem," said one of his own lieutenants, a young blade species warrior who had been secretly attending Tay's classes through remote connection. "Maybe we've been thinking about strength all wrong." The general's own forces were splitting. Some remained loyal to the old ways, but others had been influenced by the new ideas spreading across the galaxy. The protest lasted for 3 days. Students from every part of known space participated, either in person or through communication links. They shared stories of how human thinking methods had improved their lives, their worlds, and their understanding of what was possible. On the 3rd day, Counselor Vorth arrived at the academy in person, the first time the ancient being had left, his home world in 1,000 years. "I have lived long enough to see many changes," he said to the assembled protesters. "I have seen species rise and fall, empires grow and crumble, ideas spread and die. But I have never seen anything like this." He looked at the crowd of beings from hundreds of different worlds, all standing together for a common cause. "You are not just learning human methods," he said. "You are becoming something new, something that has never existed in the galaxy before. You are becoming a unified galactic community that transcends species boundaries." Vorth turned to face General Krex and his fleet. "The question is not whether we can stop this change. It has already happened. The question is whether we will adapt to it or be left behind by it." The general left without taking any action against the academy. His own forces were too divided to be effective, and the political cost of attacking students from every major world would have been catastrophic. The protest ended not with victory or defeat, but with the realization that the galaxy had fundamentally changed. Students returned to their classes, but those classes were now being broadcast to millions of beings across hundreds of worlds. Tay's simple decision to teach a single class had become a galactic educational revolution. As he prepared for graduation, Tay received a message from his sister Dobbin back on Earth. "Big brother, I saw the protests on the galactic news feeds. Mom and Dad are proud of you. Graduation day at the Galactic Academy had never been like this before. Ships from across the known galaxy filled the space around the Academy. Some came to celebrate, others to witness history, and a few came with darker purposes. Tay stood in his dormitory room, looking at the simple graduation robe that had been made specially for him. It was the first human-sized graduation robe in the Academy's history. Next to it lay a more important gift, a communication device that would let him talk to Earth instantly from anywhere in the galaxy. His sister Dobbin's face appeared on the screen, smiling despite the early morning hour in Seoul. "Big brother, are you nervous?" she asked. "A little," Tay admitted. "There are rumors that some galactic powers are planning to kidnap me during the ceremony. They want to keep human knowledge for themselves. And what are you going to do about that?" Tay smiled. "Something very human, something they won't expect." The graduation ceremony was held in the Academy's largest space, a huge chamber that could hold 50,000 beings. Every seat was filled, and millions more watched through galactic communication networks. Representatives from major worlds sat in places of honor. President Park Si-jin had come from Earth, along with Admiral Kim Jae-hyun and Ambassador Yoon Ji-hye. It was the first time a human leader had attended a galactic ceremony. Principal Vextar stood at the central podium, his 4 arms spread wide. "Today, we graduate the largest class in Academy history," he announced. "And today, we graduate our first human student." When Tay's name was called, something unprecedented happened. Students from hundreds of different species stood up and began applauding. The sound was incredible, clapping, clicking, humming, and other noises that couldn't be translated but clearly meant approval and respect. But as Tay walked toward the stage, 3 different groups of heavily armed beings moved toward him from different directions. Each group wore the colors of a different galactic power. Each wanted to capture the human and his knowledge. They had planned carefully, timing their movements for the moment when Tay would be most exposed, but they had not planned for what actually happened. Kix floated directly into the path of the first group, its crystal body blazing with light. "You want to hurt our friend? First you must go through me." Blore stepped in front of the second group, his massive form blocking their advance. Small human taught Blore big things. Now Blore protects small human. Whisper descended from the ceiling in front of the third group, its energy form pulsing with defensive patterns. "Harm the teacher, and you harm all students." But they weren't alone. Hundreds of other students moved to surround Tay, creating a protective barrier of beings from across the galaxy. Species that had been enemies for millennia stood shoulder to shoulder to protect one human. The would-be kidnappers found themselves facing not just Tay, but an army of young beings who had learned that cooperation was stronger than conflict. "Stand down," ordered General Krex, who had arrived with one of the kidnapping groups. "This human is too dangerous to be allowed freedom." "No," said a voice that made everyone stop moving. Counselor Vorth had appeared at the ceremony, his ancient presence commanding immediate attention. "The human is too valuable to be imprisoned." The old counselor walked slowly toward the stage, his age and wisdom evident in every step. "For millions of years," Vorth said, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber, "we have believed that intelligence was limited by species origin. We thought that each race had reached the peak of what their biology allowed. We believed that progress came from technological advancement, not from thinking differently." He stopped next to Tay, looking out at the thousands of beings in the audience. "This young human has proved that we were wrong about everything. Intelligence is not limited by biology. Progress comes from new ways of thinking. And the greatest advances happen when different minds work together instead of competing against each other." Vorth turned to face the kidnapping groups. "You want to capture human knowledge and keep it for yourselves. But that is old thinking. That is the kind of thinking that kept the galaxy stagnant for millions of years. The ancient counselor looked back at Tay. What do you choose, young human? Will you go with those who would imprison your knowledge, or will you do something different? Tay stepped forward to the podium microphone. His voice carried across the chamber and out to the millions watching throughout the galaxy. I choose to do what humans do best, he said. I choose to share. He pulled out a data device that contained everything. All of his notes, all of the teaching methods he had developed, all of the solutions his students had created during their classes. I'm giving this to the Academy's public database, Tay announced. Every species, every world, every being in the galaxy can access human thinking methods for free. No one can control this knowledge because everyone will have it. The chamber erupted in chaos. Some beings cheered, others protested, and the would-be kidnappers realized their plans were now pointless. But Tay wasn't finished. I'm also announcing the creation of the Human Method Institute, he continued. It will be a new kind of school with branches on every world that wants one. Students will learn not just human thinking, but how to combine human methods with their own species' natural abilities. President Park Si-jin stood up in the audience. Earth is proud to support this institute, she announced. We will send teachers to any world that requests them, and we welcome students from across the galaxy to study on Earth. What happened next changed galactic history forever. Representatives from hundreds of worlds stood up to volunteer their planets as sites for institute branches. The kidnapping groups, realizing that their targets were now worthless, quietly retreated. Even some of the most conservative species began discussing how human methods might benefit their worlds. But the most important moment came when Kix, Blore, and Whisper joined Tay at the podium. We want to be the first teachers at the Institute, Kix announced. We will teach other beings how to combine human thinking with resonant, Titan, and energy species methods. Within hours, thousands of students from other species had volunteered to become teachers. The human method was becoming the galactic method, a way of thinking that belonged to everyone. 3 months after graduation, Tay stood in the first Human Method Institute campus on Earth, watching as students from 50 different species worked, together on projects that would have been impossible under the old galactic system. In one laboratory, a mixed group was developing new faster-than-light travel methods that combined human engineering with alien physics. In another, beings were creating art that expressed emotions no single species could understand alone. Ambassador Yoon Ji-hee brought him the latest reports from across the galaxy. The changes were remarkable. Wars that had lasted for centuries ended as species learned to solve their conflicts through cooperation instead of conquest. Planets that had struggled with poverty became prosperous as they applied creative problem-solving to their challenges. Scientific advancement accelerated so quickly that the galactic technology level advanced more in 6 months than it had in the previous 1,000 years. But perhaps most importantly, young beings from different species were growing up as friends instead of strangers. The galaxy was becoming a community instead of a collection of separate, competing civilizations. Any regrets? Ambassador Yoon asked Tay as they watched a group of students, human, crystalline, energy-based, and others, working together on a project to improve food production on rim worlds. Just one, Tay said. I wish my old math teacher could see this. She always said that the best way to solve a hard problem was to teach someone else how to solve it. A message arrived on Tay's communication device. It was from the Galactic Council, officially requesting that Earth join as a full member of galactic civilization. The message was signed by Counselor Vorth and, surprisingly, by General Krex. The galaxy has accepted that change is not only inevitable but beneficial, the message read. We formally invite humanity to help guide the continued evolution of galactic society. Tay smiled and looked out the window at the ships arriving and departing from Earth's new spaceport. Beings from across the galaxy came to learn, and Earth's teachers departed to share human methods with distant worlds. A young student approached him, a being that looked like a walking tree with silver leaves. Teacher Tay, the student said through a translation device, I have a question about the homework assignment. What's your question? Tay asked. You said to think of a problem that has no solution and then find 3 different ways to solve it. But if there are ways to solve it, how can it have no solution? Tay laughed. That's exactly the right question to ask. Most problems that have no solution are really problems that no one has thought about in the right way yet. As he helped the student understand the assignment, Tay reflected on how much had changed since he first walked into the academy. He had been just one human going to school. Now the galaxy was full of beings who thought like humans, creatively, cooperatively, and with the understanding that any problem could be solved if you approached it from the right angle. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly what it needed. Later that evening, Tay received a video call from Dabin, now studying at the Seoul campus of the Human Method Institute.